On Thursday afternoon this week, St. James's was full of music and full of the 17th century words of the Book of Common Prayer. Choral evensong was being held here to mark the 300th anniversary of the woodcarver Grinling Gibbons, who carved the reredos behind me that you see. Evensong was being attended by a congregation who, like many others, was thinking about the health of the Queen. In the responses of that service, evensong according to the Book of Common Prayer, along with praying that God will give peace in our time, that God will save the people, that God will show mercy on the earth, along with those words is a prayer that is sung at every evensong, that God will save the Queen. This prayer was sung in this church for the last time in living memory on that day, just as the news was about to break that the Queen had died. Given the location of this church in this parish, St. James's has also witnessed a gathering of the Privy Council, the Accession Council, and yesterday the solemn proclamation of the new King Charles III, just 2 streets away from here at St. James's Palace. The events of the last 3 days have affected people all over the world. In this sermon, I'm not making any assumptions about what you might think or feel about the death of the Queen or the British Constitution or the new King. There will be every range of view online and here in the building, from fervent supporter of the monarchy to an ambivalence or confusion to a conviction that the only sensible option is that monarchy itself should cease. These principal positions inevitably affect reactions to the death of the Queen, but this period of official mourning, these 10 days, is not, in my view, the time to rehearse those. For the people who were here on Thursday, as we announced the Queen's death, there was a sense that there was nowhere else they would rather be to hear such news that represented such symbolic change. The first thing we were able to do then was pray for her as she passed from life through death to new life, and pray for all who would mourn, still mourn, someone who has quite simply always been there. Many, many hundreds of people have come to this place since then to sit for a while, perhaps to sign the book of condolence and to take it in. 2 came to be married here yesterday. Another group of 20-somethings came for a service last night in which the Queen was remembered with love. We are here a respite centre for volunteer stewards and marshals who will be increasingly working around the clock in the coming days as the numbers who come to Westminster increase. And we will observe the 10-day period of national mourning with the church being open and available as a space for people of all faiths and none, marking in our daily services and music this moment of change for church and society. And for those of you who are regular here at St. James's, you'll know that, as Daniel said, there was a planned trip to New York and Washington this week. We've postponed it, not least because the patron of the Wren project is the Queen's son, Prince Edward. It's simply not the right thing to do, to travel, to celebrate and fundraise in a period of mourning such as this. Whatever the complications or effect on the Wren project, we'll find another time next year. And our friends at St. Bart's Church in New York have been amazingly supportive and are praying for us today at their service. Much has been said about this being a once-in-a-generation, once-in-a-lifetime moment. And many have been caught out a bit, perhaps you have, by the strength of their reaction. I spoke to a TV newsreader on Friday who said that having held it together professionally all day, they found themselves crying after the programme had come off air because the news they'd been reading all day was sinking in. The people who've come to this place, even in the past few days, have been Londoners and visitors from all over the world. Just a snapshot. A 20-something Muslim Londoner who said he really respected Queen Elizabeth's faith and that he thought she was queen for everyone he came to light a candle. A 40-something from the Ivory Coast who thought we should have not 10 days of mourning, but 10 days of celebration for such a long life. A young career diplomat who unexpectedly found herself in tears at the thought of the change that is to come. An 80-something with memories of watching the coronation on a neighbour's television. As with much to do with the monarchy, sometimes this system provides the rest of us with a cipher through which to express other deeply held griefs. A level of exhaustion after 2 years of pandemic, the distress of millions caught in the effects of climate change, the background count of anxiety because of money and the cost of living. So much change and uncertainty can leave us feeling unanchored, untethered in some way that it's hard to define or describe. The gospel for today, which is the reading set for this Sunday, is a picture of God's presence in the world offered by Christ as a woman who searches for what is lost in this life. In this case, a coin. For its time, such an imaginative picture painted by Jesus, one of his short stories, to help us understand more deeply what God's presence is like in the world. The pen portrait of this woman in the gospel is a presence that is persistent, diligent, insistent that nothing and no one is left behind. She is compassionate, joyful, happy to throw a party at the drop of a hat. This is an image, a description of the divine presence in the world. God who searches, God who never gives up, God who celebrates, who finds and treasures what is lost in us, even when we lose ourselves. This God is constant and present and can be encountered even when it seems the world is turning us over, or we feel that all we want to do is hide away. Just as the new King Charles was being proclaimed here yesterday morning, 2 streets away from here, as I mentioned, I met another person here at the church who was angry that he was homeless and was telling anyone who would listen that he was frustrated he kept being moved on by security guards. His distress was raw, and he didn't know that the Queen had died. At the same time as the proclamation of the new king, the family of Chris Carber, with thousands of supporters, were gathering not far away from this church to mourn and protest at the shooting of their son by police in this city on Monday. And here at St. James's, we had a message from a church in Pakistan asking for assistance with the terrible flooding they're experiencing. All reminders, of course, that yes, this is a global event, but there are many people who simply don't have the time or energy to think much about it. The challenges of our society and our world, along with the huge human potential for good, are waiting for our new king as they're waiting for the rest of us. And there's no more appropriate place than church for these real-world, daily, crunching, humane concerns to be held in a place that has held the prayers and griefs of generations. The God who persistently searches to find what is lost, even when it's us, is constant and present through all of that human history, back into prehistory, and at the heart of all creation now. In part, then, we come to a sacred place like this on a day like today to acknowledge in prayer that we're part of a much bigger story. something that the late Queen Elizabeth knew all her life to. Her own faith, steadfast and straightforwardly devotional. Her own spiritual practice, attending church every week, gave her the longest possible perspective on world events. And it's this perspective that can carry us through uncertainty and give us strength to meet whatever comes with courage and, like the woman in the gospel, even joy. The tenderness with which stories are being told about the Queen as a person are striking in these days, especially moments where she seemed to break out of the formality that always surrounded her. Like the time she was accosted by tourists walking in the Highlands with her security guard. "We've heard the Queen lives around here," one of them said. "Have you met her?" Quick as a flash, the Queen said, "No," but pointing at her security guard, "He has." So they asked her to take a picture of them with him because he'd met the Queen, which she duly did. There is much said about the kingdom in Christian language, which is a way of talking about an event and a place where God dwells and where Christ-shaped justice and peace prevail. Although our human versions of this fall way short of this justice and peace, the language has the same sort of feeling, that there is a person whose life is simply being lived at the heart of it. The parameters of a sovereign are measured by birth and death, not by appointment and resignation. It is a hallmark of our Constitution that at the centre of what can seem like a soulless bureaucracy or a large governmental operation is simply a life being lived. And the Christian faith will bring meaning to the human-shaped, human-sized reactions to the death of the Queen that will catch some unawares and remind many of the personal griefs and distresses that they live with themselves. At a time of commemoration for so public a figure, it's important to, as she would want, to commend to God all those who have died unnoticed, with unmarked graves and untold life stories. All are precious to God, and each one an individual and mysterious soul. The Queen remarked in a year when she'd endured the death of both her mother and her sister that grief is the price we pay for love. In this season of creation, may we love fiercely and strongly all that God has made, without fear or favour, knowing that the price we pay for such risky living is grief that may leave us from time to time unanchored. So as we give thanks for the long life of service of Elizabeth our Queen, as we place our trust in God who is with us now and searches for us even still, let us pray that the souls of all the departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace and rise in glory.